Welcome back. This is the last part for Packet 3, so this is part 5. Today we're going to be looking at scales and scale drawings. We have a map in front of us and the key is to the left. So you might want a ruler for this part. You'll notice that it is 2 centimeters equals 600 miles. So we have to figure out how much miles and kilometers is the distance between 2 points on the map. So we first have to figure out our key before we can do that. So our key is split into 4 sections for the miles. So we know that the very end is 600 miles. So we're going to split 600 into 4 so we can figure out what the other sections are as well. So 600 divided by 4 and you get 150. So the first section, so each section is 150 more than the last. So the first is 150 miles, the second is 300 miles, and the third is 450 miles. And we know that 600 miles is 2 centimeters. So that means 300 miles is 1 centimeter. And then in between is just a half. So 1.5 centimeters is 450 miles, and half a centimeter is 150 miles. Now we need to figure out kilometers. And if you look, kilometers now cuts those 4 sections in half. So now for kilometers, we have 8 sections. So I'm going to cut the same part into 8 sections this time. And if you notice, up to the 5th line was a 600 kilometers. So in order to figure out the rest of the sections, I'm going to take 600 divided by 5. Not by 8 because it's not at the end, it's at the 5 mark. So we're going to take it divided by 5. So now we can see that each section is 120 kilometers. So the first section is 120 kilometers. And you're just adding on 120 each time. So then the second section is 240 kilometers. The third section is 360 kilometers. The fourth section is 480 kilometers. We already know the fifth one is 600. The sixth one is 720 kilometers. The seventh one is 840 kilometers. And the last one is 960 kilometers. The reason we did this is so now we can find a unit rate for how much 1 mile is compared to kilometers. So now we can see that 600 miles is compared to 960 kilometers. So now we can find a unit rate. So we're going to have 960 kilometers over 600 miles equal to blank over 1 mile. So thinking back to unit rate, in order to get to 1, we're going to divide by 600 on top and bottom. So 960 divided by 600 is 1.6. So we find out that 1 mile represents 1.6 kilometers. So now when we find miles, we can now just multiply that by 1.6 kilometers. So the only reason we needed that little key for kilometers is to figure out how much it is compared to the 600 miles. So now we're really only looking at the 600 miles key and the 1.6 kilometers. So our first question is Washington, D.C. to San Francisco. So you're just going to measure, and these can be more estimated than accurate. So it's about 7.5 centimeters. So we know that 2 centimeters is 600 miles. So you're basically just cutting that in half. So you would have 600 plus 600 plus 600 because that's 246 centimeters. And then you have 1.5 centimeters left over, which is 450. So add all that together, you get 2,250 miles. Now we know for 1 mile is 1.6 kilometers. So we're going to take that 2,250 times 1.6, and you get 3,600 kilometers. Looking at number 2, it's Washington, D.C. to Seattle, Washington. So we're going to measure that in centimeters. And when we measure that in centimeters, we'll notice that it's the same. So it's 7.5 centimeters again. So I just put same as number 1. I'm not going to redo the work over again. So same as number 1. Looking at number 3, says Washington, D.C. to your state capital. Well, our state capital is Topeka. And kind of depending on where you put the point is how much it will measure. So your measurement should be around 3 or 3.5 centimeters. I would take 3 or 3.5 centimeters for this one. I put 3 centimeters for myself, but again, 3.5 would be fine as well. So remember, you're going in twos. So 2 centimeters is 600. And you have 1 more centimeter left over, so that's 300. So for number 3, you would have 600 plus 300. And 600 plus 300 is 900 miles. And for every 1 mile is 1.6 kilometers. So you would take 900 times 1.6. And when you do that, you get 1,440 kilometers. Looking at number 4, Chicago, Illinois to Los Angeles, California. When you measure this, you get 5.5 centimeters. We're going by 2s, so 2, 4, so that's 600 plus 600. And then left off from 4 is 1.5 centimeters left over, so that's another 450. Add all together, you get 1,650 miles. Then you're going to take that and multiply by 1.6 to find your kilometers, and you get 2,640 kilometers. Number 5 is Augusta, Maine to Austin, Texas. And when you measure, you should get pretty much exactly 6 centimeters. And we're going by 2, so that's 2, 4, 6, so you're going to add 600 3 times. Or you could have done 600 times 3 as well. And you should get 1,800 miles. Then you're going to take that and multiply by 1.6 to find kilometers. And when you get 2,880 kilometers. Number 6 says, which is longer, a mile or a kilometer? How can you tell? Well, think of our unit rate. 1 mile to 1.6 kilometers, so kilometers is longer. And how can you tell looking at the unit rate? 1.6 kilometers to 1 mile. Flipping to the next page. Number 7 is asking how many kilometers make 1 mile? Well, that's the unit rate. 1.6 kilometers makes 1 mile. Explain how you determined this. Well, we found our unit rate by finding the unit rate. And number 8 is a little word problem that we're going to be using. So it says, how many days would it take to travel from Washington, D.C. to San Francisco, California? Traveling at 60 miles per hour for 8 hours per day. Show your work. So you're traveling 60 miles per hour for 8 hours a day. So we're going to take 60 times 8 to see how many miles we travel in a day. So we travel 480 miles in 1 day. And we know from Washington to San Francisco, from number 1 on the last page is 2,250 miles. So 2,250 divided by 480, and you get a decimal, so it's 4.6. But if we round to the nearest, it's about 5 days. So rounding to the nearest whole, it's about 5 days. And I'm sorry about all the pop-up emails during that last bit. We've got 2 more left to finish, and then we'll be done with this part. So it says that we're trying to find the distance of a race. So we have 3.5 inches, 3.2 feet, and we know 1 inch represents 400 feet. So we're just going to change all this to feet. So in order to change the inches into feet, we're just going to take the 3.5 inches times the 400 feet. Which is 1,400 feet. And then we already have the other one in feet, so now we can just add the 2. So we have 1,400 plus 3.2, so you get 1,400 3.2 feet. So what's the length of the actual race? 1,403.2 feet. And the last one, we have 1.1 inches, 1.3 inches, and 1 inch represents 3 kilometers. So we need to change this all to kilometers. So we're going to take 1.1 times 3. And when you do this, you get 3.3 kilometers. Then you're going to take 1.3 times 3. And when you do this, you get 3.9 kilometers. And now we can add the 2 together. So 3.3 plus 3.9, you get 7.2 kilometers. There are no questions that you need to answer on this part, but if you need any help, please use Google, Classroom, Remind, email, or my Google number.